As leaders, discouragement has a way of regularly knocking on our door, and we have to find a way to maneuver away from it or out of it. So it's not that discouragement doesn't come, it's that when it comes, we don't stay in it long enough to allow it to hurt us or destroy us. I want you to know today that discouragement is deadly. It kills. Discouragement can wreck lives, it can ruin relationships and destroy dreams. Over and over again, we see that people who get discouraged sometimes just never come out of it. I want to tell you a quick story about John Toole. He was a young man who wrote a book out of the Army. He had a desire to be a writer. And as he's writing his book, he starts shopping it around. He starts sharing it with other people. And one after another, the rejection is overwhelming. Over and over and over again, he's rejected. They don't accept the book. But his mom never quit. She kept moving it forward and taking it to places. She finally took it to Loyola University, where a professor there loved the subject, and he was able to read the book for her. Well, make a long story short, this book became like number one. He won a Pulitzer Prize for it. And it actually it went way beyond any imagination or dreams that he would have as a writer. The problem was, of course, because of the continual rejections and eventually taking their toll, John gave up. His mom never did, but he took his own life because of the rejection and the discouragement that weighed heavy on him, even though his book, 12 years after his death, became a powerful book. It was called The Confederacy of Dunces, and it won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. There are other people throughout history that found themselves overcoming great challenges and setbacks and discouragement. And I want to share a few of those leaders with you real quickly. The first one here is Winston Churchill. Churchill failed the 6th grade and was defeated in every election for public office until he became prime minister at the age of 62. When he met with his cabinet on May 13, 1940, as England was about to enter into the war against Germany, he told them, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." It was amazing because that's exactly what they needed. Winston Churchill stood before a number of cadets who were graduating from the academy, and he gave this famous speech where he stood up in front of them with a passionate tone in his voice, and he said, "Never, never, never, never give up." And he sat down and the place erupted, and of course England was thrust into a world war that became victorious in defeating and pushing back the Germans. Never give in, never give in, never, never, never is nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never, never, never give up. Well, it changed the course of a war for a gentleman who lost every race in politics until he was over 62 years old. The second guy I want to talk to you about real quickly is learning from your failures. And we're talking now about Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison's teacher said that he was too stupid to learn anything. He was fired from his first 2 jobs for being non-productive. He made thousands of unsuccessful attempts at inventing the light bulb. But when a young reporter asked him how it felt to fail all those times, Edison's now famous reply was, "I didn't fail 5,000 times. I discovered 5,000 ways that it didn't work." How about you? When things don't go as you hope for, do you get paralyzed by self-pity or do you take a step back and ask yourself, what can I learn from these experiences? The next one I want you to know about is a guy named Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein did not speak until he was 4 years of age. He did not read until he was 7. One of his teachers described him as mentally slow, unsociable, adrift forever in the foolish dreams. Einstein had speech difficulties as a child and was once thought of being mentally handicapped. He was expelled from school and failed. He failed to be admitted to the Zurich Polytechnic School. However, he buckled down, received some training, and was eventually accepted in that same school. He received a Nobel Prize in physics and was generally been recognized as the genius of our modern era. Because of his early failures, Einstein could have given up. Obviously, he wasn't meant to be a writer or speaker, but he was meant to be a physicist on the highest order. The key? Discovering his niche. How about you? Do you think of yourself as a failure in life because you failed in one area of life? Maybe those failures are a message to you to do something else and try something else. The next one, some of you might remember this name, Beethoven. Beethoven handled the violin awkwardly, and his music instructor told him that he was hopeless as a composer. He continued to play his own compositions instead of working on his techniques. The rest, of course, is history and even legend. Beethoven wrote 5 of his greatest symphonies while being deaf. We're thankful today that Beethoven insisted on playing his own compositions, but it really he had to trust his gut. He may have given up on his pursuits of composing. He just knew that he wasn't meant to be a composer. How about you? Are you doing what you know you should be doing? Do you continue doing it even if your critics and friends tell you not to give up? I'll never forget the time I preached my first sermon about 35 years ago, and a lady came up to me and she said, "You don't even sound like a teacher. You don't even have a good voice for it. You probably shouldn't be doing this." And I remember going away thinking about it, and I meditated on it for a while, and I just kept doing it. I just been doing it ever since. And so one of the things you have to learn is that you got to learn to follow your gut and what you're supposed to do rather than listening to everybody else. There's another guy, some of you remember this, he was an actor called Sidney Poitier. After his first audition, the casting director told Sidney Poitier, why don't you stop wasting people's time and go become a dishwasher or something? Poitier recalls that he decided at that very moment to devote his life to acting. How about you? Does the sting of criticism want you to quit, or do you allow it to motivate you to go to the next place? Finally, allow another person here that some of you might be familiar with, J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became known for anybody, she was a divorced mother living on welfare. She refers to herself as the biggest failure I knew, but credits much of her success to her failure. She explained to a Harvard commencement speech, failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to be myself. I was anything other than what I was, and I began to direct all my energy to finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded in anything, I might have never found the determination to succeed in the one area I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became a solid foundation for which I built my life. Interesting thought. The whole idea here is that the proverb says the godly may trip 7 times, but they get back up again. What are we talking about here? We're talking about people throughout history who overcame discouragement, who were able to set rejection and fears criticism that wanted to stop them. We're living in a time today where you and I have to get literally new perspectives, new thoughts. Leaders, if you will, are readers. We have to read material to make sure that our mind's getting renewed so that we're not stuck in the same old thoughts, limited by our own boundaries without realizing that God has a plan. We're talking today, leaders have to be self-disciplined enough to know that when discouragement comes knocking at your door, it may be knocking, but you don't have to let it in, and you don't have to let it ruin your life. Let's overcome discouragement by renewing our minds and trusting that all things are possible with God.